Welcome to our Wednesday here at the Weather Farm. Let's dive right into it. That system that brought the flooding rains over this past weekend and severe weather across Florida for Monday, that has now moved completely off the East Coast and is no longer affecting the United States. We do see an area of disturbed weather that is forming over Iowa this morning. It is going to spread rain through the Great Lakes, and then that low is going to just sit and spin over the Great Lakes area on our Wednesday into our Thursday, and that's going to provide a consistent chance of storms across that area over the next 48 hours. And out west across the Pacific Northwest, especially into British Columbia, we are watching yet another system begin to make its way onshore. In terms of our temperatures for our Wednesday, where we see that cloud cover and that precipitation on our Wednesday through Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana, temperatures will be held down into the 30s. Across most of the Northeast, we're in the 30s and 40s, pretty seasonal, if not a few degrees below normal this time of year. But the warmth is really across the central plains where temperatures are going to surge into the 70s all the way up towards Nebraska. And that warmth is going to continue to build as we go through the week. 90s are returning to Texas, and the desert Southwest is heating up as we see temperatures in the mid 90s. So let's look at the next 48 hours in detail. So we see that system beginning to take shape over Illinois by Wednesday afternoon. That's going to spread the initial amount of rain through Illinois, Indiana. And as we get toward the nighttime hours, we could see some mixing with snow across parts of Wisconsin and lower Michigan. Nothing too significant, nothing that will accumulate, but just a general mix of rain, snow, and sleet across that area. And as I said, that low is just going to kind of sit and it's going to spin there for a while. And so we're going to see as we begin our Thursday, rain moving through Pennsylvania, but we're going to see showers begin to reform as we get into the heating of the day on our Thursday. So by Thursday afternoon and evening, we start to see showers making their way through Kentucky into Tennessee, and some of those showers could produce heavy amounts of rain. We don't expect severe weather or tornadoes with this system, but the possibility is there for an isolated severe storm with gusty winds and heavy rain. By the time we wake up on our Friday morning, that low pressure is now moved over to the Carolinas. It is bringing rain to places like Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. Out across the far northwest, we see snow spreading across British Columbia, with that next weather system making its way onshore into the Gulf of Alaska. Temperatures on our Friday are going to be held down. We're going to see that definite trough with that low that moves through the Ohio Valley Wednesday and Thursday. It is bringing in another blast of colder air. So we're going to see temperatures held down in the 30s and 40s across most of the eastern half of the United States, while 70s are surging all the way up in Saskatchewan. And the real triple-digit heat is going to be confined into the southwest, where Phoenix, you're going to be approaching the mid-90s for your Friday. And by the time we get to Saturday, that system that brought the rain to the Tennessee Valley on Thursday, it's now moving into the northeast, pulling in some moisture off of the Atlantic Ocean, and enough cold air is going to be in place that we could see some mixed precipitation during the day on Saturday across New York, New Hampshire, into Vermont. Out west, we see some scattered precipitation across parts of Idaho and Montana, but we see those red height contour lines, those 500 millibar height contour lines, those are reaching all the way into far southern Canada. So there's a strong ridge of warm air that is building across the central plains. That is eventually going to move east as we get to our Monday. But in terms of our temperatures, we do start to see that warming happening across the Ohio Valley. Temperatures are now recovering into the mid 50s, still a few degrees below seasonal, especially for places across Kentucky and Indiana, but out across the central plains, we're now surging to near 90 degrees for Nebraska as that ridge of warm air and high pressure continues to build, and the desert southwest continues to sizzle. We are seeing a little bit of cooling across the Pacific Northwest, where temperatures in Portland, you're going to be held down into the upper 40s for your Saturday. As we look at the end of our weekend, Sunday, that system continues to move offshore. Warmer air is beginning to move into the northeast, so that's going to change whatever lingering snow showers and sleet that we have. That's going to turn it over to rain by Sunday morning. We see a system moving across the far northern plains, bringing rain to parts of North Dakota and Minnesota, as well as Saskatchewan, Manitoba, into Ontario. But the rest of the country is very quiet for this time of the year as ridging continues to build to the east across the central plains into the Ohio Valley. we do start to see a little trough digging across the parts of the Northwest, across Montana, Idaho, into Wyoming. That's going to allow some cooler air to sink in. And we see that here with our temperatures, as temperatures across that area are going to be held down into the 30s and 40s for our Sunday, whereas right ahead of it, Kansas, you're going to be in the 90s on our Sunday, as well as widespread 90s across most of Texas. Across the Northeast, we are warming now into the near 50 degrees, and the Ohio Valley continues to remain warm. For those last bit of spring breakers down in Florida, temperatures are going to be warm generally in the 70s and 80s for your Sunday. So let's just look at everything in motion. As I mentioned, we're going to see that system making its way through the Ohio Valley on our Wednesday, bringing a mixture of rain and snow. Models have trended down the amount of snowfall over the last several hours, but then we're going to see that secondary low bring heavy amounts of rain, isolated downpours through Kentucky and Tennessee on our Thursday. That all moves to the northeast by the time we get to Friday and Saturday, and we see a system moving across the Canadian prairies, bringing snow to the far northern reaches of the prairies as it makes its way toward Hudson Bay. And then that next trough begins to dig across Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming as we get to our Sunday. In terms of precipitation, Wednesday and Thursday, we are looking at generally a 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch amount. Now, we're across parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. This is mainly going to be a Thursday rain event, as this map takes us through Thursday night at 8 p.m. So where we see those downpours pop up, that's where you're going to see the heaviest amounts of rain. So it's not out of the question that we could see an isolated 1-inch rain amount across parts of southeastern Kentucky into central Tennessee as that system moves to the east. And out west, as that system moves onshore into British Columbia, we could see some isolated rainfall amounts nearing 1/2 an inch across parts of Washington and Oregon. But as we move up into British Columbia, that's where the more significant precipitation is going to be. We could see widespread 1 to 2 inches of rainfall by the time we get to Thursday evening. And our weather pattern is really not going to change much over the next 8 to 14 days. This week is going to be dominated by generally quiet conditions with our weather. No severe storms are expected. No tornadic outbreaks are expected. But as we get into next week, and as we get towards the end of next week, that's when we begin to start to see a possible pattern shift. While we have the western 2/3 of the United States experiencing above normal temperatures during the time period of April 16th through April 22nd, it is the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and into the Northeast that is expected to be slightly below normal during this time period. But as we look at that precipitation map, the West is going to be warm and it is going to be dry. And we're going to see where across the southern plains, through the Ohio and Tennessee valleys, up into the Northeast, that's where we're going to see the best chances for above normal precipitation during this time period. And what this pattern tells me is the way that this kind of map is we're going to start to see by the time we get to the 19th, 20th, 21st of April, we're going to start to see more of those systems ejecting out of the Rockies and moving their way through the Central Plains. That's the kind of setup that will lead to those severe thunderstorms that we saw in the last couple of weeks. What's happening this week and why everything is quiet is we have this big ridge out west, we have the trough in the east, and so all the systems are moving up and over that ridge and diving out of Canada into the eastern half of the United States. That generally doesn't produce severe weather, but as we get towards the 20th, the 21st, 22nd, that's where we see that pattern change beginning to move, and our precipitation outlook map here helps solidify that thinking, and that we will start to see a return to severe weather in the last third of April. We thank you for joining us here at the Weather Farm on your Wednesday. It's been a very quiet week. There's not a lot to talk about in terms of significant weather. We are keeping our eye on a couple of systems as we get toward the middle and end of next week. We'll continue to bring you the latest on those. We hope you have a wonderful Wednesday, and we will see you soon.